Well, welcome to Talking Underwater with James Magnussen and Bobby Hurley.
I could talk swimming all day. We're here to preview the World Championships.
We've got a bumper Australian team, we've got some rising stars, some established champions. Let's get ready to race.
I think one thing to preview for the World Champs for everyone here is the race, the event of the meet. And I'm going to be biased. I'm going to start first. For me, it's going to be the women's 200 freestyle. It is a stellar field. We know all the names. We've got the two great Australian girls being Emma and Ariane as well, up against LEDECKY and Pellegrini, both medaling, both finaling in every single international meet. Boys, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, really interesting event. I think for me, the World Championship trials was the emergence of Emma McKeon. Now that's going to sound very strange for people at home. She's been on the team for a long time. She's an Olympic medalist. She's a World Championship medalist. She's been and done it all. But at the World Championship trials, she actually beat Ariane TITMUS, who's ranked #1 in the world. She's in the best form of her career. She did PBs in the 200 freestyle and the 100 freestyle. She's probably the form swimmer going into this World Championships in that event. And if ever there was a time that Emma's going to win a World Championship gold, this is the time, this is the event. So look out for her.
Now, Bobby, you're obviously so well versed with international swimmers. In a perfect world, all three of us would love Ariane and Emma to touch first, and LEDECKY and Pellegrini to get behind, but LEDECKY's in fine form.
Yeah, they come in ranked 1 and 2 in the world, which is no mean feat, but the competition that they're up against is truly world class. LEDECKY, obviously the Olympic champion. Sostrom's entered in this race, the Olympic silver medalist. Emma was third in that race. And 2 years ago, in a classic World Championship final, Pellegrini takes over at the last 20 metres and gets a gold. She's been on every podium since 2005 as a 16 or 17-year-old, so you can never discount that sort of championship pedigree. LEDECKY comes in. You know, this is her race to lose. She's the gun, 200 up sort of freestyler, but it is a race that she has lost in the last 2 years. She's got a monster World Championship schedule.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about LEDECKY as such. I feel like, you know, even not being Australian, we love watching her because she's amazing. She has a massive schedule.
Yeah, we have our very own version of Katie LEDECKY actually in Ariane TITMUS. So those two will go head to head. It's probably the rivalry of the week to watch. They'll go head to head in the women's 200 freestyle, the 400 freestyle, and again in the 800 freestyle. In those two longer events, it's almost them against the field. We expect them to break away and be dominant. The 200 freestyle is going to be closer, but it's a huge week for those two, huge rivalry. Who can get one up on the other leading into an Olympic year? If Ariane could get a couple of wins, that would put us in a great position as a country going into the Olympics next year.
And I think particularly as well for the 400 freestyle for the women as well, anything breaking 4 minutes, you know, there are not a lot of women going 3:59 or under at the moment. So I think their breakaways will be themselves.
Yeah, 4 minutes is that classic barrier that only these two have been under in a textile suit. And LEDECKY's got that world record at 3:56 from Rio, but she hasn't been that fast in a couple of years. Ariane's done multiple 3:59s now, and she comes in right on Katie's heels and pushed her at the Pan Pacs last year. So I think Ariane's 18 or 19 years old. I don't think she can get her this year, but the experience of racing her in a big championship final, if she can get close, it puts her in a great position for Tokyo next year.
And for all of us as well, I think the big thing is we want LEDECKY to be taken over. We want Australia to come through in all these, you know, so we want to be proved wrong. We also, you know, want them winning, breaking world records as well. But more importantly, the form that they've had in trials, just making sure that they step up as well, because the pressure is massive and it's something that we need to continue to get better at with Australian swimming as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure. Look, this is the first World Championship, so we've had the later trials. So all the swimmers are in form. There hasn't been a big gap in between the two meets. So we should see a difference in performance than we have the past few years. Talking about pressure, Ariane's going to be in the pressure cooker this week coming, but she needs that experience leading into Tokyo. She is our genuine gold medal hope leading into the Tokyo Olympics, so she needs to experience that. For me personally, sitting at the World Championship trials and watching those girls, it is wild the times they're swimming. Sub 4 minutes, I would not feel confident standing on the blocks next to either of them.
Well, you burn after 3 laps, right?
I definitely couldn't match it with Ariane for any more than 3 laps.
Yeah.
Well, what people forget is Ariane went to Short Course Worlds in December last year, which is not a huge meet on the Australian schedule, but it is a legitimate World Championships. And she won the 200 freestyle there, coming over the top of the American girls at the end. And then she won the 400 free and broke the world record. So she's not going to get pressured in the moment. She's won Commonwealth Games gold medals, raced LEDECKY at Pampax last year. So this is all just getting familiar for Ariane before the big one next year.
Absolutely. It's definitely a meet and an event to watch as well. The women's 200, 400, right up to the 800 as well. So then Katie Ledecky as well, out of all those women, then we're looking at her doing the 1500 as well, James.
Yeah, she'll push up towards the 1500 where we expect her to be pretty dominant. But we've got two Australians in this event who are genuine medal chances who could push her. Kia Melverton and Maddie Goff both swam really well at the trials, both way under the qualifying time. I expect them to be there in the final. I expect them to be around the medals. And they're both at that point in their careers where they can drop large chunks of time. So if anyone's going to challenge for those medals, they're certainly up there.
Yeah, they come in ranked 6th and 7th in the world with little experience behind them, but this is going to be valuable before next year. The women's 1500 is a new Olympic event, so people are still figuring out how to race it, how serious is it going to be, do you swim more the 8 and 15 or do you go down to the 2, 4 and 800? We see our men deciding that at the moment with Jack McLaughlin and Matt Corden, and the women are going to have to decide that as well, but it makes a monster program for Ledecky. She broke the world record last year. She's the fastest in the world by a good 20 or 30 seconds, but she's still got to get the race done, and this will be a really good experience for Kia and Maddie.
Now, James, you mentioned before that this year the Australian swimming trials were on much closer to the World Championships. Bobby, can you explain that to us? Normally trials are how far out and why this year we've got it closer?
Yeah, normally Australia has their trials a good 3 months before the major competition, whether it be a World Championships or an Olympic Games. The American way that they do it is 5 weeks before. So with Jaco coming in as our head coach, having a foreign head coach, we finally adapted. Last year there were multiple events with trials, Commonwealth Games, Pampac trials and Pampacs, but this time we do it for real. We've got the World Championship trials there in Brisbane 5 weeks ago. So all the swimmers selected for this team should be in good form.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw a big difference in the swimmers that we had at the national championships earlier in the year in February and the swimmers that we had peaking at the World Championship trials. So there are variations in form during the year, and it was a bit of a lottery in the past going into World Championships or an Olympic Games, knowing where you're at with your training, knowing how your taper's gone and knowing what sort of form you're in. So this year we should see informed swimmers swimming at their peak.
And I think one thing that we can all have experience on, which we do, and we can actually discuss is, I personally found that the hardest step was actually making the Australian team because the competition is so hard, and I think the pressure is there the most. You know every person in the crowd, you know every coach that's on the stand, and then almost once you've made the team, it's almost, you know, mentally it is that little bit easier because you're like, you know what, I've sorted out my teammates, I've made myself on the place, and now it's about stepping up to the international standard.
Yeah, trials was always more nerve-wracking than the actual meet because you go there, you're already on the Australian team, you're having a lot of fun, and if you swim fast, then that's a guaranteed bonus. But the Rio Olympic team, 2/3 of that team swam slower. So we're trying to get that out of the system and select swimmers that are in form, racing fast. And swimming as we progress to the future is going to be about racing fast regularly throughout the year.
Well, Maggie, let's move to you. I've obviously spoken about the women's 200, 400 mid-distance being races and meets for you. Any guesses what yours will be?
I'm going to bring that distance down a little for concentration levels and past experience. I'm going to highlight the men's 100 freestyle for me as the race of the meet. We've got our Australian gold medalist, Olympic Games gold medalist, Kyle Chalmers, headlining that event. He's going to be challenged by the American Caleb Dressel, who has, I think, the 3rd fastest time without a suit behind Cam McAvoy and myself. So a big event, one for me that is going to be really interesting because Caleb Dressel is a swimmer who has a lot of front end speed. He's going to go out really fast. He's going to put it out there in that first 50 metres and see if anyone can catch him. Kyle Chalmers is going to do the exact inverse of that. He's going to go take it out nice and easy and try and swim home over the top of his competition. So a great match race for me. Bobby will add in some international names that will also be in that event.
Well, what makes this such an interesting race is not only the times and the people, both of these guys are champions, but the way they actually swim it as well. And you're in the same boat as Kyle, where you used to come home on the second lap. And in that 2013 final, you had guys going out fast. What does Kyle need to think about to execute this race?
Kyle's got to go in there purely thinking about his race plan. He can't take notice of where anyone else in the field is. In 2013, we had a Russian swimmer, Vladimir Morozov, went out 21.9 in the first 50 metres. I remember turning in that race, looking to the other side of the pool and seeing his feet And I did panic a little. I was able to compose myself and still get the job done. But for Kyle, the same thing could happen with Dressel at this World Championships. If he really wants to win this race, he's going to have to be out fast. He's going to have to spook Kyle in that first 50 metres. So Kyle's going to have to stay relaxed, maintain his composure, and really finish strong if he wants to get the job done.
Let's talk about this for a bit, because if we explore this, in the history of swimming, it's always been the Americans that go out fast, first off, straight away, and yet Australians are always, I guess, our laid-back way, where we come back faster. What do you think that is? I mean, it's always given, Americans are always out front and first in that first 50 metres, and then the Australians do the great job coming home.
I think, is it a little bit of our attitude of, she'll be right? Like, okay, I'll get there eventually. No, look, I think for me personally, as an age group swimmer, I did a lot of kilometres. I came from a 200 down to the 100. Kyle Chalmers is very similar. He's going to compete in that 200 freestyle during the week at Worlds. But I think a little bit of it is personality. We are very laid back. The Americans are very enthusiastic people. So I think that does come into the way that we race that 100 freestyle.
Well, Dressel's a 50-100 guy, so he's going to have a lot of speed. He's defending world champion the 50 freestyle as well. Kyle's a 100-200 guy, and I think the 200 could be a really legitimate event for him too. Dressel's got the best flat start in the game right now and the most powerful underwater, so he'd be silly not to use that. But in the events in the past where he hasn't gotten away to a good start, he's susceptible to getting beaten at the end. So Kyle won Rio as an 18-year-old, just brash and swimming through wash, and you know, he was rough around the edges. Now I look at him, he's chiseled, he knows what he's doing, he's got clean underwaters. I think he's got one of the fastest turns in the world right now, so he needs to execute all of that and swim Dressel down. So
it really shows you that there are many different ways to climb mountains as well for people to reach the pinnacle of what they want. Another question I wanted to ask you about the 100 metres is, we always say it's a gold ribbon event. What makes it gold ribbon? I mean, apart from the good looks, James, you know, what makes this such a gold medal? Because, you know, even my son was saying to me at home this morning as well, you know, are we going to see Usain Bolt? You know, it's also the same as in athletics as well. The women's 100 freestyle as well, we'll get to as well, equally important as well. But what makes a blue ribbon event?
I think, look, there's a few things. There's the bravado, there's the egos.
Yes, boom, I was waiting for that. I baited him.
There's the physical size of the swimmers. When you look at the size of the swimmers on pool deck, the 50-100 freestyle guys will be generally the biggest guys on deck. They have got the biggest egos. They do strut around pool deck.
Because we had to Photoshop his shoulders in it, didn't we, before, Bobby, for this to work?
Yeah, so look, it's just the nature of the event, and I think people's attention spans do come into it as well. There's very little analysis that has to go into it. You watch it as 2 laps of the pool, people are going flat out. It's exciting, it's fast, it's over like that. You make one mistake, your race is over. High stakes, high rewards, high entertainment. That's I think what people like.
And Bobby, you said something before that I'm really interested to hear as well. You said that Dressel at the moment is the fastest underwater. Can you explain to our audience what makes what are they doing underwater that makes them so fast?
Well, the guy's just got incredibly powerful underwater dolphin kicks. He's super strong in the gym. He's got a big mobility and ankle flexibility and mobility through his back. So his underwaters are just so powerful, especially off the start. And going back to that 100 freestyle, it's the blue ribbon event because I think the 50 freestyle only came in about 1988 or 92. So now that's the fastest swimmer in the pool, but the 100 metre is still classed as who is the best swimmer in the pool. And whoever, I've spoken to guys over in the US and in Europe and coaches and people of different generations, and the guy that's the #1 swimmer in the 100 freestyle is king of the pool. And Maggie was there for a couple of years. Kyle's been there, and it's sort of up for the taking at the moment with Dressel, Kyle. There's a couple of Russian guys behind him and Brazilians as well. But that guy, if you're the #1 guy in the 100 freestyle, you're going to be an important player in that 4x1 relay as well. So they're just incredibly dominant swimmers in this era.
Can I go a bit more personal? And Maggie asked, do you think to be one of the best in the world, whether it be the men's 100 freestyle or Bobby, the men's 50 backstroke, you need to have an ego?
Absolutely, yeah. You do need to have an ego. I think a lot of times people in the media or people at home can get confidence and arrogance mixed up. If you want to go out there and perform in the main event of an Olympic Games and win, you have to believe that you can do it before you go out there and actually execute that. And to believe that you're the best swimmer in the world takes a certain air of confidence bordering on arrogance. You see the way Usain Bolt struts around. We don't call him arrogant because he's got the results to back him up. But, you know, Michael Phelps was very similar. And you do need that in the swimming pool. You need to think that you're the best before you can be the best in the pool. It's vital.
Yeah, if you don't believe it, then it's not going to happen. And especially when you're up against 7 guys that also believe it, then your belief needs to be stronger than theirs. So there's a lot of mental side when you're stepping up behind the blocks in a World Championship final that you're the guy that's going to win this race. Because if you're not, then it's going to go by you.
Yeah, I remember a certain Olympics, Alexander Popov, as we know, one of the world's greatest sprinters. So many people tried to emulate him, his style, his appearance, everything. That Gary Hall Jr., I think everyone's heard this in the marshalling area, went up to each of them individually in the final of the men's 50 freestyle and just stared them down. And then it got to Popov and Popov just didn't even look at him. And then in the end, Popov ended up winning. So you can win or lose a race actually in the marshalling room.
Well, there's a couple of good stories about that. That's another one that I've heard before. I think, Maggie, you've got some stories about particularly the 4x1 freestyle relay marshalling room.
Yeah, look, the 4x1 relay is it's a wild event. There's a lot of testosterone. Again, there's a lot of egos. Like I said, you've got to have a big ego to compete in the event, but you put 4 together, 8 teams, 32 guys in a room. There's definitely been some intense stare downs over the years. There's been some pretty close to altercations, but it's a lot of fun. Probably if we move to that men's 4x100 freestyle this year, Australia's team not looking as strong as it has in the past.
Does that hurt you to say that?
Yeah, it does. It does. Look, I think we're an outside medal chance, but there's a certain way I believe we've got to swim this relay. Kyle Chalmers, potentially the fastest 100 freestyle in the world at the moment. Obviously, he and Dress will be going 2 and 4th, but if Australia want to win that relay, we have to lead Kyle off. We have to get out in front, and then those other swimmers will get that boost of energy when they realise there's a medal up for the taking. If we lead off with one of our slower swimmers and touch 6th after the first leg, suddenly we're not really in the race. Suddenly those swimmers are thinking about swimming to avoid getting last rather than swimming to win. So I think that's really important for the Australians, but the Americans are looking pretty dominant in this event for this Worlds.
Well, there's bigger ramifications for this relay as well. The year before the Olympics, you've got to be top 10 through the heats to automatically qualify the federation to the Olympic Games next year. Otherwise, you've got to swim a time trial. So this happened to Australia in 2015, and they had to swim a time trial to qualify because they swam the B team in the morning. And at the moment, we've got Kyle, the #1 swimmer in the world. Cam's been quick before, Clyde Lewis and Alex Graham, but the depth drops away to 49.0. So we're going to have to swim those guys in the morning to secure a spot in the final and secure a spot for the Olympics next year. But as you said, the American team's loaded, obviously with Dressel, your old rival Nathan Adrian, and some young stars coming through at 48.0. But they actually got disqualified at the Pampaks last year after winning for swimming the wrong order. The guys, the middle legs.
Oh, don't talk to me about being disqualified.
So Brazil ended up winning that relay and coming away with the gold medal. A lot of young stars swimming 46.47 low. The Russians have got a lot of top swimmers in that race too.
One question that I think is really important, you know, refreshing for me as well, and also the people listening. Tactically, why is it so important where the teams are in the final for a relay?
Yeah, the relays, the tactics and placement of key swimmers are important. There's a lot of drafting that goes on. And in the 4x1 free, especially on the men's side, there's a lot of big waves happening in the pool. So we saw it in Sydney when Thorpe came over the top of Gary Hall Jr. at the end. Obviously, the Americans beating France with Jason Lezak doing it as well. And Maggie's been on the front end and the back end of those sort of relays too.
Yeah, look, it's really important the lane you get. We probably don't have the luxury of resting swimmers in that men's 4x1 free. We've got 400 freestylers over there. Our 4th swimmer was 49.0 at the trials. So it's not the strongest team we've put together, so we'll probably have to swim those guys all in the morning. The women's event is much different. We do have the luxury of a lot of depth in the women's 100 freestyle. We're the reigning world record holders, the reigning Olympic champs, the reigning Commonwealth champs. This is a star-studded team. This is our gold medal event. I think we expect to win this, particularly going into an Olympic year next year. So we found out that Shayna Jack has come home from the World Championships. She won't be racing, but we do have Maddie Wilson and Brianna Throssell up our sleeve to swim in that heat. So we can probably rest Kate and or Bronte for that final, bring in a really strong team for the final. Those girls in the morning, I'm sure, can get the job done, can get us into lane 4. Could we see another world record? I don't want to be the one to put the pressure on, but Emma and Kate are in great form. Bronte was strong in the 50 free at trials. I expect her to be in better form for the 100 at this Worlds. I think there could be another world record on the cards.
Great, I'll second that as well. Own it. I think it's great. We're talking positivity, and I think, you know, we will them too. If they do, great, and if not, we're going to love them no matter what.
Yeah.
Yeah, Emma McKeon's improvement in the freestyle at the trials is a big one for the team. And Shayna's obviously a loss, but Maddie Wilson's swimming out of her skin as well, went 53 point in the 100 freestyle. But it's the order that it comes down to. Like you said with the lanes through the heats, or more importantly, in the final, do you lead off Kate, do you lead off Bronte, or do you lead off Emma, who's a great relay swimmer as well? So that's where key decisions from the coaching staff will be very valuable.
Now, let's talk about the girls for a minute. Both the Campbell sisters as well, moving into the week as well. Let's talk about the sprints, the 50s, the ones.
Yeah, so if we start with the 50, we've got Kate and Bronte as our entrants in the 50 freestyle. Kate in great form. They've both recently moved to Sydney.
They have.
New training facility up there at Pymble Ladies College. Same coach, so that hasn't changed too much. But they both looked good at the World Championship trials without looking necessarily in the best form of their careers, but both look strong. I expect them both to feature in the medals in this 50 freestyle.
Yeah, particularly in the 50, Kate, you know, that's the one where there's no room for error, and she's been multiple 23 points at any given time during the season. And she went a 23.7 at Commonwealth Games last year to win and do a PB, which is just amazing. She's been on the team 10, 11 or 12 years. To still be swimming at a high level is freakishly good, but not to discount the opposition that she's up against. Pernilla Bloom's the Olympic champion. Sostrom's the world record holder who will be there in all of her races. And
Sostrom has been around, I mean, I feel like she was around even before I came on the scene. She's been around forever.
Yeah, 2009 World Championships, I clearly remember her winning gold medals there, so that's 10 years ago now. It's crazy.
Yeah. So the longevity of these girls is a whole nother thing, with Chroma with Jojo winning the sprint double at the London Olympics. So Kate and Bronte on their day can get this done, but they need to nail it in the final.
I just like the fact now that New South Wales get to say we've got the fastest freestylers and not Queensland for once. So that's really good.
Nice.
Bobby, let's go back to you for a minute. We haven't heard your race, your event of the meet that you believe is coming up.
Yeah, my key race for this week is going to be the men's 100 backstroke. That was one of my favourite races when I was swimming. And again, like we see in the women's 200 free and a few other events this week, it's so fast, a lot of world record holders and world champions in that final, but it's still anybody can win. Ryan Murphy's sort of the big dog on the men's backstroke right now, but he's got a lot of challenges. He went 51.9 at the Pan Pacs last year, but the Chinese swimmer Zhu Xiaoyu is right there and actually won the world champs 2 years ago. And the form of Mitch Larkin at the trials last week was just spectacular. His return to fast swimming, I think, pleased everybody in Australia.
Yeah, Mitch Larkin looked good. He looked. That's probably the best I've ever seen him swimming. I spoke to him after the race. He said he has changed his strength and conditioning program a little. He's looking a bit bigger, a little bit musclier, which helps in those big races. There's
Trying
a bit of chop in the water. No, I don't. I think he's in much better shape than I am at the moment. I'm not going to put myself in that category. But yeah, Mitch Larkin looked great. We saw him have quite a couple of years following the Rio Olympics. That probably dented his confidence a little. He changed programs. He tried doing more sprinty training. He's gone back to the hard work. He's with Dean Boxall. He's training with Ariane TITMUS. So we know he's doing the kilometres. We know he's fit. If he can be there or abouts that last 10 metres, we know he's going to have the fitness to finish that race off.
Yeah. I've got two questions for you. Bobby, I'll start with you. Obviously being a world record holder, you know, not a lot of people get to experience that in the world. What is that moment like?
Well, my world record in 2008 was an absolute shock in the 50 backstroke. I put a bodysuit on for the first time and dropped about half a second from my PB, and I sort of knew as soon as I touched the wall that I'd broken it, but it only sunk in a little while later. I remember the week before that, I think I did 50k in the pool, training for the 400 freestyle. So,
and that's 1,000 laps for anybody at home listening to now. So that's 1,000 laps in a 50-metre pool.
More than I do in a week.
Yeah,
or
so
a month. A month.
So that was a huge moment in my career, and we've seen Mitch Larkin win world championships before. He's broken short course world records, and for me, I raced him a lot during my career, and when he was at his best is when he had really good underwaters, great starts and great turns, and he had that sort of at the end of 2014 into 2015 when he achieved all those great things, and it sort of went missing in Rio and after that. So up in Brisbane, I took a good look at him, and he looks really fresh and fast, and it's probably, you know, a thumbs up for his coach and his skills coach, but also his body and the physical condition that he's in. And not many swimmers leave Michael Bowles' program and actually get better. And Mitch has gone back to his best times. He's gotten better in the 200 IM, that he'll be very prevalent in this week as well. And it's just going to be an absolutely lightning race, this men's 100 backstroke.
Let's talk, because you're obviously both speaking a lot about the physical appearance of the Australian swimmers. You know, how when you speak about James to us just then, he looked really great on pool deck. He looked amazing, you were saying, in the water. You know, what is that? Is that your body language when you're walking onto the pool deck as well? Because sometimes I think you can win or lose a race depending how you actually walk into the arena.
Yeah, absolutely. The way you hold yourself, the way you present to other swimmers is really important. Personally, for me in heats and semis, even if I was exhausted after that heat or semi, I'd hold that breath in. I'd lounge on the lane rope. I'd look like I was relaxed.
Yeah, but you're struggling
I wouldn't
inside.
let anybody know that I just busted my backside to get that time. It's appearance is a huge thing, and the way you strut into the marshalling area, the way you hold yourself, it's all part of it. And we saw that body language come back for Mitch Larkin. I definitely think around that Rio Olympics and the following year, he was a bit low. He didn't look confident. He didn't look happy. He had a breakout Commonwealth Games last year with 5 gold medals, which was awesome. He's definitely carried that confidence into this year. He does look physically bigger, but yeah, he is carrying himself with an air of confidence that I haven't seen for a number of years.
That's amazing, isn't it, as well? So speaking of men as well, let's move into the men's 400. Let's talk about mid-distance for a minute. Obviously, Bobby, you're the international guru here. What are we looking at there?
Yeah, the men's 400 frees on day 1 in Gwangju, and Sun Yang's definitely the favourite in that race. He hasn't lost that race, or he's lost it only once in 7 years, and that was to Mac Horton at the Rio Olympics, and we all remember the controversy there. And Sun finds himself in more controversy again.
Absolutely.
But he will line up in Korea for that race, and he's the man to beat. But we've got Jack McLaughlin just performing out of his skin, getting better year after year after year. Yeah,
for me, probably the male swimmer of the meet at the World Championship trials was Jack McLaughlin. This is going to be the start of his week. He's got a massive program, 400 free, 800 free, 1500 free, 4x200 freestyle. He'll swim more meters in racing this week than I would swim in a normal session. Like, it's unbelievable. And I think he'll be confident going into this. I know we speak about Mac Horton being the Olympic gold medalist, but I believe our best chance as Australians in this event is Jack McLaughlin. He's in the best form. Mac missed the qualifying time at the trials, so probably some would say a little lucky to be getting an individual swim here. There's been talk that he didn't get his taper right, that the training that he was doing leading into the World Championship trials wasn't as strong as he's been doing since. So we expect him to feature, but I think Jack McLaughlin's he's having one of those years where you can set no foot wrong. Everything's flowing for him. His stroke looks great. He's confident. I wouldn't be surprised if he challenged Sun in this 400 free.
The big thing also with Mac Horton as well, whilst, you know, we can all say, fact known, that his form is currently off, he's also going in with a lot less pressure as well. There's not as much hype as well. And at the end of the day, he is an Olympic champion, and you can never write off an Olympic champion. And sometimes that's exactly what you need, as you were saying before in one of your races back before when you had pneumonia, and you went underneath the radar as well. And sometimes when you do that, he's done that before. He's competed against the best. So you never know what can happen.
I think he is under the radar. He's probably created some rivalries there for himself that will always simmer away. He and Sun Yang, we know there's bad blood, and we know that they have a fierce rivalry. So I think whilst the public perception may be that Mac's out of form and we don't expect much from him, he'll expect a lot from himself.
Absolutely.
He won't want to give any ground to Sun Yang. And it's, again, leading into an Olympic year, there's statements to be made this year. And the winner of that race will take a lot of confidence into the Tokyo Olympics next year.
Absolutely.
I think Mac and Jack are at different point in their careers, where Mac had some early success winning in Rio, and he's been thereabouts in the last 3 years without being dominant and really pushing himself and asserting himself in any race. So regardless for Mac what happens here, he's a big-time swimmer and a big-time performer, and this could be a little rocket up the backside leading into for the next 12 months. But Jack's out there looking for confidence. He needs to swim good, believe that he can be in that final and compete with these guys.
Yeah, I think an interesting one when we talk about Jack McLaughlin, and I have asked myself this question a number of times, having watched him at the trials. what is his best event? He looked great in the 400. His 800 was dominant. And the 1500, he probably didn't have as much competition in that at the Australian level. But a huge week for him. What do you think he'll be targeting the most?
Well, he's spoken about potentially dropping the 1500, as like in the women's side where we see the men's 800 is now an Olympic event. And this could be sort of perfect territory for Jack, where he came through the junior ranks as a 1500 swimmer, and now he's finding success at the senior ranks in the 2 and the 4. So he's definitely medal chance in the 400 freestyle, but and in the 800, if he has that belief, he can be right there as well, because he'll have the same opponents. He'll have Sun, the Italian guys, Dedi and Palcineri, and a lot of the distance swimmers from Europe. But in Australia, that distance swimming is something really close to everybody's hearts. The 800, especially the 1500, with all of our rich history. So it'd be good to see Mac and Jack racing that next year in that Olympic final.
Yeah, Mac Jack, I love it, the duo. That sounds great. Bobby, let's go back to you being the international backstroker guru and all things. Let's talk women's backstroke. Let's talk Seabomb for a minute.
Yeah, Seabomb, big disappointment to miss the national team for these World Championships. She's been on every single Australian team since 2007. I think she qualified for that one as a 14-year-old. So she's had a huge, long international career. She won Australia's only individual gold medal 2 years ago in Budapest, so she won't get the chance to defend her title. But she swam reasonably well, not up to her standards, but we just got such a great depth in the women's backstroke.
We do. That event hasn't it? It's really picked up. And again, it shows you the pressure as well. I feel like every year when we have a major meet coming up in the trials, there's always an Australian swimmer that is just, we just know is guaranteed a walk on, and then they miss out.
Yeah, look, I think the big surprise for us in this one was Minna Atherton. We knew she was good. We didn't know she was this good. The thing that adds even more interest to this event is that her and Em are training partners. So sometimes leading into a big event like this, when you get a poor performance, you could say, did I do something wrong in training? Was my preparation wrong? Was the coach giving me the wrong workload? She was doing the same workload as Minna Atherton, and Minna swam the race of her life. So that's a really interesting balance there. Probably a tough one at training for David Lush, but that's another conversation. But yeah, Minna goes into this as a genuine medal hope again. She is a star of the future. She's one of Australia's rising stars. She's got the physical attributes that you need to be a world-class swimmer. She seemed very relaxed at the trials. She was able to beat her own squad mate, who is very experienced, and for many would be quite intimidating to race against someone that experienced.
It's funny with Minna, she's been thereabouts close to making Australian teams or on Australian teams the last 4 years, and she's still only 19.
Yes.
So she's got a maiden victory over Seabomb. She comes in as the #1 backstroker. She won medals at World Short Course last year, which is always a great stepping stone into bigger competitions. But not to outdo, Kaylee McEwen is absolutely flying as well. 4th in the 200 backstroke at the last World Champs as a 16-year-old. She just turned 18 and she comes in highly ranked. And I think she's somebody that could be a medal chance, especially over 200 metres.
Yeah, I think if we look as they push up in distance, Minna probably the stronger over the 100 and a real medal chance. When we go to 200, that's where Kaylee starts to show her class. Minna there again. This is going to be a big program for her when you add in the relay, something that she probably hasn't done in a week-long program before. So that's going to be a juggling act for her. But the women's backstroke stocks, we're looking really strong. It's some of the best depth we've got in any event across the board in Australia.
Let's explore that for a little bit. Talk to me about Australian swimming, how it's changed, how you can see not only the culture change, obviously we have a head coach as well that's obviously hasn't come from Australia as well. What do you think has been the biggest change from the last Olympics?
Look, I think there's been a change in focus, obviously, for the preparation that we're doing. We spoke about the later trials. With the qualifying times that we had for this World Championships, they're brutal. But it's all about, we only want the best swimmers on the team. There's no longer people coming along for a ride. They're there to participate. People that are there to win medals. We've got a smaller team than we've seen in the past, but a stronger team than we've seen in the past. And all that focus now is on high performance. It's on getting the results. We want a strong Olympics next year at Tokyo. London and Rio weren't our best Olympics that we've had, but we're moving in the right direction, I think. And we're seeing with this young crop of stars that we just spoke about, Minna, Kaylee at the forefront of that. We've got people that can drop large chunks of time leading into the Olympics next year and be genuine medal threats. And because of these tough times that we've set to qualify, nearly across the board in all events, we've got medal chances.
And that's all right. With the trials being 5 weeks out, and the times that they had to swim to qualify were top 8 in the world from the last World Championship. So unless you're a World Championship finalist, you're not going to get selected. So that's some pretty tough standards. But we've had that in the past, but the trials were 3 months before. So everybody would peak in March or April and not be able to reproduce. So at the moment, everybody on this team is capable of making the final, and now they need to convert that, be in a final, which then puts you in a position to win medals.
Yeah. And I believe that's a really great thing. I mean, we want our country, again, to not always be, oh, we're up against the Americans. We want America to look at us and say, well, hey, we're up against the Aussies as well. We've always been at the top of swimming. I feel like we need to push again to get back right up there across the board in so many things, because I'm finding at the moment there are certain events that we're just so dominant in, and others where we once were, and we really need to pick up again. You know, the men's 4x1 being a clear example of that. And it's not that the calibre of swimming has changed. It's just there's new rookies coming in, new depth coming in, and in a few years' time, they could be the next greatest thing again, come again. So it's more so, I feel like, the fact of the culture has changed and shifted. And I guess the big question, which is a controversial one as well, is do you feel that it's still very much so gelled together as a team and not a bunch of individuals?
Yeah, look, I think that's the hardest thing about swimming. Like, for everyone at home, when you watch something like State of Origin, you've got a team of people who all have the same goal. The same result is a success for all of them together. In the Australian team, a gold medal for me may be mean missing out on a final for Bobby, or something of similar outcome. So the goals are always different, the results are always different, the emotions are always different throughout different events. So it's really hard to come together as a team. So that's what we're always working really hard and striving towards within Swimming Australia. I think the great initiative that Swimming Australia has done this year by condensing the size of that team is probably making a more tight-knit group. I think it's a great initiative, because the bigger the team doesn't mean the better the results. Often the inverse, I believe. So this is going to be a tight-knit group over there at these World Championships, and I think that will bring out the best results in the individuals within the team.
What we could see with a smaller, tight-knit, high-quality team, though, is heavy schedules for some of the stars, especially with the addition of mixed relays, and us in Australia as a country being strong in the 3 traditional relays as well. So guys like Kyle Chalmers, Kate Campbell, Mitch Larkin will find themselves swimming their individual races, but then 3 or 4 or 5 other relay events too.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough program. It's going to be interesting to see how someone like a Kyle Chalmers balances that schedule. For me personally, if I had to do 2 4x1 frees, mixed and men's, plus 2 medley relays, plus my individual event, we're sprinters for a reason. We don't handle distances very well. So it's going to be a really interesting juggling act. It's going to be really interesting to see where we place importance on which events and how that reflects on the medal tally.
James, let's have a crack at the men's 200 metre breaststroke.
Yeah, really an interesting event for us here in Australia. We've got 2 really strong entrants in the 200 breaststroke. Also interesting because they swim it in exactly inverse race plans. So Matt Wilson, really strong off the start, really strong down the first 200. Our first 100, we saw him under world record pace at both the Australian Championships and the World Champs trials. Then Zach Stubblety-Cook comes home really strong. Matt Wilson has really good skills, really good dive, really good turns. Zach Stubblety-Cook, not a good dive, not good turns, but probably the fastest swim speed of any breaststroker in that field. So again, the world record is under threat there. We've got about 5 guys close to it. Matt Wilson and Zach Stubblety-Cook among those, but there's also a very strong international contingent.
So that's going to be a really strong race, isn't it, Bobby?
That's the crazy thing. Matt Wilson's half a second off the world record, and he's ranked about 3rd or 4th in the world because it's just absolutely stacked. Chupkov, the Russian, probably leads the pack. He's number 1 in the world, won the Europeans and World Champs. I think he got silver in the Olympic Games. The Americans and then the Japanese as well. Matt and Zach, they got 2nd and 3rd respectively at Pan Pacs last year behind Watanabe from Japan. And those guys like to take it out fast as well. So many different race strategies. Matt Wilson could be leading through the 100 or 150, and then it's really game on between 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, and a big week for Matt again. He'll drop down to the 100 breaststroke as well. Not his favourite event, but our only entrant in that 100 breaststroke. I expect him to be around that final, give or take, but he'll be more focused on the 200 breaststroke. And then being our 100 breaststroker, he'll also step down into the men's 4x100 medley relay.
Well, that'll be the key for Matt, is juggling a heavy program
Yes.
that he hasn't done before. He doesn't have relay final experience, and he's going to need to get it in a big way here, because not only in the men's medley relay, but the mixed medley relay is a gold medal shot for the Australian team.
And this is a new entry as well, the mixed medley relay, isn't it?
Yeah, this is an Olympic event for next year, so this is one that Australia will take quite seriously. And we've got probably the best back end in the world with the two females coming home, Emma McKeon in the fly, Kate Campbell in the freestyle. So it's up to Mitch, who's got a lot of experience in the backstroke, and then more importantly, Matt Wilson, to hold together in that breaststroke leg where he's up against Adam Peaty.
Yeah, look, any team going up against Adam Peaty is at a big disadvantage. The guy's, 2-3 seconds faster than the rest of the world in the 100 breaststroke. It makes it so tough, but there's going to be a lot of different tactics going into this. So Bobby spoke about putting 2 men first, finishing the back end with 2 women. Not every country will do that. America's got really strong butterfly in the men, so they'll have Caleb Dressel towards the back end of that relay. It's going to be all over the pool. It's not one where you can watch and say who's in front, who's behind, because it is going to be across the pool, very difficult to work out. But an Olympic gold medal is up for grabs next year in this event. So countries will have to start taking this seriously, have to start putting strong teams forward, and have to start seeing how those teams gel together and what order works best.
Because it is adding more on, obviously, to their schedule as well. And particularly if you're a sprinter and you're doing the heats, the semis and the finals, it really adds on a lot to it. Mitch Larkham, let's talk about him in the men's 200 IM.
Yeah, Mitch Larkham comes into this meet the #1 ranked swimmer in the world in the 200 IM. This is an event where he's just gotten better and better in the middle parts of his career. Obviously a good junior 200 IMer and 400 IMer, and then sort of sat back and let his backstroke do the talking. And now under Coach Dean Boxall, looking for a bit of a refresher and reinvigorating part in his latter part of his career as he gets between sort of 25 and 30 years old, and now he's the fastest guy in the world. So he won Commonwealth Games last year. He's going to have some stiff competition this year with Chase Kalish and Dia Seto, Olympic medalists and champions in their own right. But we see him, this sort of has connotations next year, because if Mitch has a better 200 IM than his 200 backstroke, then I think the 200 backstroke could be an event that he drops as they fall on the same day.
I mean, I guess we're in the post-Michael Phelps era now, so that's wide open. Who's the next big thing in IM swimming? We've also got Tom Fraser-Holmes in the 400 IM, back on the team. Close friend of mine, same age. We raced all through age group swimming, so great to see him back, and I'm sure he'll be putting in a strong performance in that event as well.
It is, isn't it? That IM now is really who's going to step up, who's going to take that crown. It's exciting to see, particularly for that event. Let's talk about Emma McKeon in the women's 100 butterfly.
Yeah, Emma comes into this week #2 in the world, second behind Sarah Sostrom at the last World Champs. She won Commonwealth Games as well, and we've seen her in career best form in the freestyle, but we'll wait and see what she can do in the butterfly as well.
Yeah, interesting to see if that career best form in the freestyle is at the expense of her butterfly. She's spoken in the past about that 100 butterfly being her favourite event, though she looked much better in the 200 and 100 freestyle at trials. So it'll be interesting to see how she juggles that with her training, what she places more importance on at this World Championships. Going up against Sarah Sostrom, man, that is a tough gig. She's so dominant in that 100 butterfly. Better Emma than me.
Yeah, true. But then again, Emma, has Olympic medals as well and has got so much experience as well. And I think once you've been up there as well, just the pressure sometimes as well for people at home, it's that pressure sometimes of being #1 and getting up on the blocks as well is you are carrying an extra weight than what most people are.
Yeah, Sarah's expected to win, so all the pressure's on her. Even though Emma's second in the world, she can go in without any pressure or expectation, which is a bit of a bonus for her, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. James, I'll let you lead the men's 200 freestyle. What are your thoughts on this, and do you feel that this is a changing of a guard event?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one for me. So Kyle Chalmers, obviously the Rio Olympic champion in the 100 freestyle. He's pushing up to the 200 freestyle. His 200 freestyle is looking almost as good as his 100 freestyle. It's really surprising, particularly the way he swims it. He backends that 200 as well. Again, very surprising.
He's obviously putting you in a lot of endurance and kilometres behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, he is, and it's really interesting. Sometimes I worry that comes at the expense of some front-end speed in that 100. As the 100 progresses, it hasn't progressed for a long time, but if it's ever to progress and people to ever start going sub 47 seconds, they're going to have to be getting out in 22 point low that first 50. Kyle's PB for the 50 freestyle is 22 low. But look, he's as good a chance to win this 200 as he is the 100, to be honest. It's a wide open field. Sun Yang probably his biggest competitor, but at the trials a couple of months ago, Clyde Lewis almost touched Kyle out. Clyde Lewis led the race. He looked great. He's come from the medley into sprint freestyle, and he's looking good.
Yeah, Clyde had a lower leg injury that he was unable to do the IM races at the trials, and they're the races where he was Commonwealth champion in the 400 IM last year, and he just made the seamless transition to the 100 and 200 freestyle, where he's ranked number 2 in Australia behind Kyle, and will race both individual events in Korea. And he went 1:45.8, which is a world-class time. He can be in the final, and this is a final where the times aren't progressing like James said. In the 100, 200, 400 free, they're just still doing the times that Thorpe and Grant Hackett and Climmy were doing 15, almost 20 years ago. So 1:45 finds you in the final. It could find you on the podium, but I believe Kyle and Sun Yang are the guys that could really go 1:44 point. And Kyle's sort of in this middle part of his career. He's still only 21 years old. I think the 200 could be a better event for him than the 100 coming into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't want to be doing that extra 2 laps. What would I know?
Let's finish off with both the men's and the women's 4x200 freestyle relay. I mean, that again is such a dominant race, not only for that, but for the crowd as well. We love a good relay at the end.
Yeah, look, on the men's side of things, we just spoke about Kyle and Clyde, both in that 1:45 second mark at the moment. So that gives us a strong team just from those two there. Add to that Jack McLaughlin, who's in red hot form that we spoke about earlier, and Alex Graham, also in great form, had a breakout year last year. Look, we're around the medals for sure. It's very hard to pace a 200. You know better than me, Elka, to pace a 200 in the middle of a relay where you're not where you expect to be all the time, and you can go out too fast and blow up. You can go out too slow and not get that rhythm.
Certainly the first swimmer of that relay really has to set the tone, because it is that 4 laps and it's not that quick sprint. So, you know, you can't be that second behind or half a second off your game. You need to be on and going for it, don't you?
Yeah, the thing with our guys is Kyle and Max, probably arguably the second fastest swimmer in that team if he makes the final, is they both like to be used later on in the relay. We need a guy that can lead off from the start and be right next to the American team, because they're going to be strong on all 4 legs. So again, the order plays into part and the tactics of it. They narrowly got beaten at Pampax last year by the Americans. Jack Cartwright was in that team, but he won't feature on the Australian team this year. But likewise, at Pampax last year, the women narrowly got the victory over the American women, which was a huge victory, holding off Katie Ledecky at the end.
Yeah, and in the women's team again, we've got those same names, Ariane Titmus, Emma McKeon, really strong in that 200 freestyle, will lead the team. I think they can challenge the American women in that event as well.
So we got, like, on the women's side, we'll see Maddie Wilson and Brianna Throssell in there as well, but you've got a Titmus that'll just lead and charge from the start. So she's your leader and your go-to girl, and Emma's a great second, third, fourth leg swimmer off a flying start. On the men's side, they're great on the flat start, but who are they going to lead off? Who's going to be their leader?
Yeah, look, for me, I'd probably go with Clyde Lewis. I think he looks like a very confident swimmer. He's in great form. I like his stroke, and I think he went out quite fast at the trials earlier this year. Yeah, he led Kyle out through the first 100. He led out a sprinter. His 100 freestyle looked great as well. I personally would lead him off and sort of say, cash me if you can, to the rest of the field. Maybe throw a few other lead-off swimmers off their race plan, and then you look to use Kyle towards the back end of that relay.
One final question I want to ask you boys both is world record alert. If there's races that you think are going to be world records, what are the ones that we need to watch out for? Bobby, I'll start with you first.
I think men's 100 fly, that iconic Michael Phelps 49.8 world record is going to go down by Caleb Dressel. He was
You're a big fan of Dressel. You've spoken about him a lot. Yeah, I know. Hashtag stalker.
Well, he was on fire in Budapest 2 years ago.
Yep.
Didn't have a great year last year, but he's already swimming incredibly fast in season this year. There's some competitors around him, but this is the race. He can swim multiple events and relays, but the 100 flyers is really untouchable, and I think he's out to get that world record.
For me, men's 50-100 breaststroke, Adam Peaty. They're his own world records, but he's in great form. He's just goes from confidence to confidence, like hasn't lost a race in quite some time. Women's 100 freestyle and women's 50 freestyle. Kate, Sarah Strostrom, they're there or abouts. I mean, such a strong field there that at any given time they're all pushing themselves, they're pushing each other towards that world record barrier. So anytime they race, I'm on high alert for a world record. And then obviously for Australia, the women's 4x1 free. I expect them to be there or abouts, and that's definitely our best chance.
Yeah, amazing. It's so great, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to see the world record come down again even more in the women's 400 freestyle as well. I think LEDECKY is up there, TITMUS is up there as well. So, you know, it's a matter of who wants it the most. And also, you know, we talk about a lot as well, something being a fast pool, not being fast pool. You mentioned something, both of you, before, that the calibre of swimming this year with the Australian swim team is certainly smaller, but the quality is actually higher. One thing that I love the fact is that the cut-off times this year were absolutely brutal, but it needs to be to lift our game, to put us in steadfast for Tokyo next year, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're brutal qualifying times, but like we said earlier, all of these swimmers are capable of being in the finals, and you've got to be in the finals to compete with medals. If you can be top 5 or find yourself on the podium the year before Olympics, then that gives you a lot of confidence to train hard. You can receive some funding, you can try something new and find yourself on the podium in 12 months' time.
Yeah, really important year. A lot of people are going to want to fire a warning shot and say, I'm the one to watch for the Olympics next year. I'm the one you should get behind. I'm the one sponsors should get around. And it'll be interesting to see who stands up and makes that statement for Australia.
It's amazing listening to you two boys talk about this with obviously so much knowledge and history and passion as well. I was just having a brainwave then thinking, you could be looking at the next 2 Australian coaches. So, you know, watch out for your jobs there, anyone listening or looking. But look, from all of us here, from James Magnussen, Bob Hurley and myself, and Talking Underwater, what a great initiative and platform the boys have set up. We are wishing every single swimmer and parent and every supporter at home watching and listening to this, and to most importantly, your Australian swim team, the best of luck.
Swim fast.
Good luck.